Schon Zoom eingerichtet.
Ah, okay. Genau, jetzt ist Custom Service und der streamt aber trotzdem zu YouTube. Dann passt das, glaube ich.
Ja. Super, jetzt. Oh.
Ja, wir sind live. Also wir sind auf Google Live. Auf YouTube. Das musst du wieder ausschalten.
And maybe Miriam, I don't know if you have opened the YouTube. Oh.
Ja, wir sind live. Also wir sind auf Google Live. Auf YouTube. Das musst du wieder ausschalten.
So, I think we are now live. Is it true? Okay, Miriam is telling us that we are live. That's perfect. So it works. Welcome to our conference, Climate, Justice and Feminism. It's our first conference we organized as we are the Institute of Environmental Justice, where we are sponsored by by Engagement Global, Brot für die Welt, and Stiftung Umwelt und Entwicklung. And normally we just do like normal panels, and this time we try to make a conference. And so this is our starter panel, our evening panel, Friday evening, and tomorrow we will have some different workshops and also like an end panel. So, and if you want to have more information, you can go on climatefeminism.org, and there you can see the full program and when to join, and also where you can see our panels and our workshops. So now I would love to welcome our guest to our first panel. And the name of our panel is like Climate, Justice and Feminism, One Struggle, One Fight, ? Because, well, one struggle, one fight, that's our slogan. But maybe there are different struggles we have to fight. And so I think it's important also to talk about that. And for that, we have international guests, as well as local activists from Germany brought together. And right now with us are, like the first I want to welcome is Isadora Cardoso, who was born in Brazil and works with Gender CC, Women for Climate Justice in Germany. Maybe you can wave so the people know you. And she enjoys intersectional feminism, climate justice, and decolonize ideas and practices, and implements those in her lives through studies, activism, and studies. Then I would love to welcome Stephanie. She is, you can wave. She's a healthcare activist and a sixth-year medical student. In different networks, she focused her work on the intersections between climate change, health, and racial, gender, as well as social injustice. And also with us is Lara. And well, you are part of the Disobedient Climate Action Network Ende Gelände since 2016, who's blocking coal mines. And you also helped to organize the first so-called feminist finger of Ende Gelände. You're also involved in the struggle to save the Dannröder Wald. And you have started a feminist cycling group in Berlin. So we have like 3 different women from 3 different regions and backgrounds brought together. And in a little while also will join us 2 other women, and one I can just pop up. She will be here in. She's just joining. It takes away. Why? Hello. We are already live. Marinel, can you hear us? Hi. We are we are already live. So on YouTube. Welcome to our panel. You are just in time because right now I just explain who's joining today. So hello. You're from the Philippines, a global activist. And you joined the movement after experiencing the devastation of the Typhoon Haiyan in 2013 and became a climate and environmental advocate. And also you are, which I think it's a really cool thing to do, is you are one of the founder of the Youth Leaders Environmental Action Federation. So welcome to our panel, Climate Justice and Feminism. And also Hilda is joining right now. And then we are all together. Something. Sorry, it's Zoom is taking a while. And something happens, so she's not there yet. Maybe it's a bad connection, but I think she will come back. I'm sorry for that. So we are here with different time zones from different regions, but I think we will all come together today, this evening, or morning, or afternoon, or really late evening. And if it's okay, I would like to start with my first round because we prepared some questions. And the first round, I would start a little bit different. I would start with telling stories about patriarchy and the climate crisis and what our experience are. Because what helps me a lot was when I learned that I'm not the only one having this kind of problems in my daily life, in my work, and also like in the climate justice movement. And so I would love to start with like breaking the ice, sharing some stories of our experience, can be like different stories. And well, maybe Lara, because I know you since I think some years, and maybe if it's okay, I would love to start to ask you if you would love to share a question.
Well, maybe I can share how Enderlander started to like talk and think about feminism like more. I think it was in like we did this actions of civil disobedience in 2015 for the first time, where I wasn't even there. I think Katrin was there, and then in 2016, and it was like from media perspective really successful. But then in 2017, in the beginning of the year, there were some activists from Denmark, like a feminist group, and they came up like to people from Enderglane and said, okay, we're a feminist group, and of course we care about climate and environment, and we joined your actions in the last 2 years, but we didn't really feel safe. It was like an environment where, like in this situation where it's also sometimes like you're confronted with the police, and you have to run, and you have to get into this open open my coal pit to stop the diggers, and it's a really like empowering situation for most people, but it's also like a lot of adrenaline involved. And they said, okay, we want to come again as a like feminist group because we think it's a like very important struggle, but we also want to feel safe. We don't want to like have guys around who shout at us. We don't want to hear like people saying to us, oh no, we need other people to go in the front because like you're just too small. We need like big tall guys who be in the front line, first line when we like break through the police lines. And we want to participate as feminists and with our feminist ideals. And can we like talk about it and think about how we can combine it and still like be disobedient, but in an inclusive and feminist way? And I think it was super important that they came up to us and like raised this issue. And then we sat down and like started to talk a lot and think a lot about how can we make our actions of civil disobedience like more feminist. And it's an like ongoing process, of course, but it started a lot of like, do we really have to run? Is it like important to reach like the digger, for example, the coal digger, that we run, or isn't it better to like go all together at the same time? And who has to be like in the front? Is it really important that it's like big tall guys, or can it be like everybody? So like combining these things so that in the end people don't have to decide, okay, am I a climate activist, or am I feminist, or am I like anti-racist activist, but that it can be like that you can be everything, and you have a like a place for activism where everybody feels safe. I mean, this is what we try to do, and of course it's like way far from perfect, but yeah, I think that's what I like most about our activism, actually, that we try to include more and more people and overcome our own stereotypes in a way. Yeah. And I'm still so grateful for these feminists from Denmark who came up and said, okay, this can't be the only way. Can we do it differently? Yeah.
Thank you. So before we are going to the next, I would love to welcome Hilda into the group, who just joined. Welcome to our panel. And for those who don't know Hilda, she is one of the founder of Fridays for Future Uganda. And she's also a campaigner for protecting the Bugoma forest in Uganda, who's under threat. And she also leads a lakeshore cleanup activity in Lake Victoria to beat plastic pollution. And welcome to our group, to our panel. And we are just in the first round where we just share stories about, feminist and climate justice, or climate justice and patriarchy. So just to break the ice, because I think we all have like so many stories to tell why this is an important topic we have to talk about. So is there someone who also wants to share like a story, something that happens, or what are your first experience with the topic? No one? Should we?
I think I can relate to what Lara said earlier today. So it already starts in the small things, and it's really impressive that a movement which is supposed to be open and supposed to be aware of these kind of structures always tends to go the other way around, even though they are fully aware of that, or even though we think that we have these topics in our minds. So it already starts with the small things, like also who's talking to who, and also this kind of structures we feel in not only in the activist movement, but also in academia, and also the people we go to when we are connecting each other. So it starts with the small things, like the way I dress, which they think is not appropriate enough, or it's not professional, or it's not like in their style as well. The way women speak, maybe they have another language which is not as objective or like highly eloquent than the man's language, which is supposed to be like super high professional and objective, and everything which is like kind of emotional already gets cornered into this, like, yeah, this is a woman, this is not to be taken seriously. So I think this is also like intersects with a lot of classist issues and racist issues people have in their minds, and also then also men taking up the space, retelling your own stories, this kind of mansplaining, which also happens a lot of time. And it made me personally feel small, made me question myself, made me question the room I take in spaces. And women in the society, I think, are thought to have low self-esteem, have low self-confidence. This is actually in studies that shows that women having this feeling tend to not go into political places and into political arguments. So this is actually something which I really needed to learn, to say, hey, don't let yourself get down. Don't let people take up your space. It's okay to take up space. And your perspective has value and is of importance. And it's actually up to us to take up this space as well, but also to the structures to make us feel comfortable, as Lara said. So I think this is at both points something we have to learn.
Thank you for sharing. It was beautiful. So does anyone else wants to share a story for the beginning, or shall we move on?
I can quickly share something as well. Yeah. I was just trying to remember some story, because I think we all can have many stories in our lives where we were confronted with very misogynistic or patriarchal ways of treating normally women in a society, anywhere in the world. So, but one specific situations which happened to me last year in the climate conference, because we work within those spaces, which are not really like spaces for movements, but a lot of our movements take those spaces as well to advance our demands for climate justice. I remember last year I was invited to talk on a panel on women or young women doing advancing climate agendas in from the global south. And I was really prepared for the panel to talk about it, like technically how we're doing, like how we're advancing our demands there in the region. And but the first thing that we started talking, like the people started talking in the panel, was super strong, because it was one person started sharing her stories of abuse during her life, and then the next one also shared, and that moment was just a moment that when everyone in the panel, which were all women or LGBT people, everyone in the panels had a similar story, and I was like, wow, this is so impressive. And we know more and more that this is such an unfortunate thing, that it's such a thing that happened to so many people, so many women, so many LGBT people, and that connected us in a way which was very strong, very also emotive, but it was also very important. It gave us a lot of power to tell the story about how we became climate activists and why we fight for the causes that we that we want to advance in the world. So that was so sharing is indeed one of the things that I think are very empowering in the feminist building of, of what we are. And this can be a climate activist, this can be so many things, as Lara said. So yeah.
Yeah, that's really true. So I would then go to my next question, because now, well, we said that there is like the same injustice underneath our stories and our life. But I also want to ask, are we sitting in the same boat? And Stephanie, if it's okay, I would love to give this question to you.
Well, this is kind of sounding like a fairy tale to be honest, like to be sitting in the same boat, because we all have our own histories, we all have our different backgrounds, but especially concerning climate change and the feminist perspective on that, we have to see that the people in the global south suffer the most. And it's not somewhere in the future, it's happening right now. As this is also not only a matter of what are the emissions right now, but also historically speaking, that the people in the global north have so much responsibility for the emissions which cause the climate crisis we face right now. So we can say that the 10% of the richest people in the world cause up to 50% of the global emissions, and 50% of the poorest people actually cause like about 10% of the global emissions, which is really not unfair and shows us that we are actually not on the same boat, especially for concerning women, which pose even now a marginalized group in our society. And especially in the global south, it's that extreme weather events like floods, wildfire, storms cause that men are, and actually women are killed disproportionately more by these events because they're not included into the security nets. For example, men who go to work every day and are in the security nets there, the women are taking care of children and elderly, and therefore they are not into the security nets. And they also, and especially women of younger age, get killed more by these weather events. Then for the other health perspective, I have to say that the indirect effects of climate catastrophes like this have more reasons to have an actual cause on the life of women. For example, the ability and to find drinking water is actually a job of women in all of these countries. They have to go farther to find the water, and actually this poses them into dangerous situations, and also only finding a place to go to the toilet already poses a danger when their homes are destroyed. And actually all these factors, and also not only in the global south but also in the global north, we see here that, for example, after a catastrophe like Hurricane Katrina in 2005 in the States caused the double of domestic violence events in the United States, and also collecting water for like hundreds of kilometers, or searching for a safe place to go to the toilet, is actually posing the women in danger in their bodies. So the climate catastrophe is not only exploiting the planet, but also exploiting women's bodies. And I could go way further than that, but I think for now, I would stop with these examples.
Thank you. So my next question then would be directly to Hilda. Hilda, can you hear us?
Yes.
Perfect. So we can, or I can, I don't know where, because we didn't hear you quite good. Do you want to try again, or? Okay. I cannot really understand you. Can the other understand you, or is it just me? Okay. Yeah. Maybe your connection is bad right now. I don't know. Okay. Maybe we will try in 1 minute again, and I will go to Marinel instead, and then I will come back to you, and we will try again in 1 minute, because maybe in 1 minute the connection is better and we can understand you. I'm so sorry for that. So Marinel, today, can you hear us? No, and she left us. Sorry for the trouble. Okay, Marinel, can you hear us? Marinel?
Hello, yes. I'm so sorry, my internet and logging in and out.
So, yeah, but I can hear you quite good. So, my question to you would be now, because, well, today we had this huge protest for the 1.5 degree target, also in Berlin. And, well, but at the same time in Germany, there are also voices from the government and also from the economy who are criticizing this 1 degree target as impossible to reach, and also as a threat to the prosperity in Germany. And so I wanted to ask you what's your opinion about that, and what would say to the German government and also to the companies who think that the 1.5 degree target is impossible to reach, or should not be considered as?
Well, for me, in development, you always have to compromise, right? And that is also true with our environment, so that we could protect more people, we can save more people. We have to make compromises, and that is, development should not just be about having profits. It's not just about getting more like more money or profits. It's also, if we will just think about how impossible it is, then we will not do it. I mean, there will be no way that we could go further with this fight, actually, because in this fight we always have to make compromises, and that compromises is very worth it because it could save lives, it could save people from the other side of the world. And if we would just think that it is too much, I mean, I could understand that they feel like, I mean, it is already their privileges, and reaching that 1.5, like limiting that 1.5 degrees Celsius for to really like comply with the Paris Agreement I mean, it could be too much, especially if they're not willing to do the compromises. But in this fight, you always have to think of the lives of other people, of who are you saving, because we always have to make compromises. And for the people in Germany, I know you can do so much, and you can always push your government to do more, to always demand accountability from them, because the first world country may not be experiencing now the effect of climate change, but in the future it may not experience, it may not you may not experience it directly now, but it is already happening, and it can affect you in any aspect of your life. And if we will not do now, if we will do something now, if we will just wait for other countries to do it, then I don't think that we will actually hit the target, because each country, each of us has to do something in order to get or to reach that target. Yeah.
So I would love to have like a follow-up question, if that's okay. So what would be like your main demands to countries like Germany?
Sorry, what's the question? I didn't hear it.
Well, if you would like sit together with like the government of Germany, what would be your demands? What if how should we how to say if you could like tell them concrete what we should do, are there something you would love to tell them?
There's so many things that I want to tell them. First, always if they could just stop funding coal and go to renewable, and if they could just support or fund those vulnerable countries to make more proactive, infrastructures, like proactive measures, like infrastructures, in order we could also like mitigate the impacts of climate change. Because like in the Philippines, we're already suffering the effects of climate change. We're dealing the effects every day of our lives, and we are always we're always worrying about our livelihood, about our house, if we will have a house at the end of the year, and if where are we going to go when there will be a disaster. So if there could be a great proactive measure that people would not be worrying if their houses is still there when there is a disaster. I mean, like first world countries can fund the vulnerable countries so that we could adapt more measures and to mitigate the effects of climate change. So I would ask them to stop funding coal in Germany and outside Germany, and also start funding vulnerable countries to have more proactive measures to mitigate and adapt climate change. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Hilda, can you, do you have a better connection? Can you hear us?
I hope I do have a better connection now. Can you hear me?
Yes, it's a little bit slow, but I can hear you. So, because I also would love to ask you a question. 5 years ago, the Paris Agreement was created. It was like a time before Fridays for Future. And I know that you attended the last UN climate conference in Madrid 1 year ago. Why was it important for you to attend, and what are your demands to the UN climate conference as well as to us in the countries of the global north?
Thank you so much. I hope I am clear now. Well, last year I attended COP25, which was in Madrid. And to me, it was the first COP to attend as a person and as a climate activist. And I had very high hopes of this COP because to me, this was the biggest climate conference that can happen in the world. And I had so much hope that it will yield a lot of hope, a lot of climate action, get our leaders to act. But last year was also the COP that commemorates the year of action, but it is also a COP that failed us. It was all about talks, ambitions, exaggerated ambitions, but there was nothing like action. First of all, I was happy to attend because I was among the few young people who was invited for this global conference, and also from the global south, because in most cases, people who are mostly affected, we are always underrepresented, especially for such conferences. And in big conferences, it's always government officials who appear. And of course, they follow the large sums of payments that come with it. And in most cases, people who are mostly affected do not represent. And I came to represent millions of young people who are bearing the brunt of the climate crisis. And I was also there to speak for all generations to come. Because to us, what matters is the things around us, the environment around us, birds, fish, animals, forests, all these things to us Africans count, but to other people they might not count. But I was there to make these people aware that these things to us count. They might not count to them, but at least should make us people count. And while I was there, my country was experiencing massive weather events that were killing people, disasters like landslides, floods in the east, and people were dying. And I was trying to stress this emergency that was happening in my country, but few people or nobody at all understood what we were talking about. And as a voice from the global south, I always communicate that women and children will always suffer most. I know that everyone will suffer the events of climate change, but women and children are on the front lines. They suffer the most from this unsafe climate. And this climate is created by rich countries in the global north that keep on funding these fossil fuel industries, that keep on the coal mines, that keep doing all these things. But they had to understand that we are humans who do not deserve to be treated like that, who do not deserve to suffer a crisis that we did not create. And I spoke boldly about the British because my country, Uganda, was colonized by the British. And by the time they named my country the Pearl of Africa because of the nature and the beauty that was around it. But I told them that if those people, or if the British were to come back to my country right now and look at whatever is going on, they wouldn't call it the Pearl of Africa again. They would have totally different ideas. And this means everything like our forests are gone, wildlife is attacked, fish is killed, everything is disappearing. Species are disappearing at a very high rate. So this climate injustice as a person or as an individual, as a woman and as an activist in the Global South is an injustice that made me to risk my education, to always miss my classes every Friday and strike for climate justice. This involves going to the streets and asking for climate justice from our leaders. And not only our leaders, but also corporate organizations and individuals who have a say, or like people like policymakers. So this climate injustice forced me to risk my education, and I will always do this for the good of the future generations. We do not really have a decision to make because this is the only way for us to get a brighter future, to get a better future. We have to fight for it. And like I was saying, at COP25, it marked 25 years of meetings and negotiations behind our backs. We couldn't say anything, but we are hopeful, and that's why we keep fighting on the streets. So last year was a bit disappointing. Actually, not a bit, but it was disappointing to us who attended, especially the youth and the climate activists, because we had our hopes very high. Our hopes were really high, but they were all overshadowed. They were all turned down. And I would say that leaders, we need leadership on climate action. We no longer need talks about climate change. Right now, we need concrete actions, because these leaders have been negotiating for the last 25 years and there is really no action at all. So we demand that leaders come up and take more ambitious climate actions. And that is why this week we are fighting for 1.5 degrees Celsius, because if we do not fight for it, then we won't have it. I mean, this is our future. It's our life. We have to fight for it. Leaders are continuing to fail us, and we can't sit on, or we can't keep on watching. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing. And my next question would be go directly to Isadora, because I know you are sometimes really deep in the negotiations of inside the UN Climate Conference. And so because often we talk about system change and then we talk about the economy, but I also would love to talk about the power structure in our decision-making structures. And where right now we just heard two strong messages about the urgency of the climate crisis, and also concrete suggestion of what should be done. And why do their demands not match the reality of the climate policy, for example, at the UN climate negotiations? So where's the problem there?
Thanks for the question, Katrin. I think there are so many problems about those spaces. It is such a problematic space first of all, because it's so inaccessible, so difficult to travel, so people cannot just go and observe. You have to go through a long process to get an observer status. So it is highly inaccessible, and therefore by that you can already presume that those negotiations are also very not representative of the populations of the delegations, the countries that go there. The delegations are normally super unequal in terms of gender balance, in terms of racial balance, in terms of so many balances that should have, because in a society we have so much diversity. But when we see the delegations of the countries, it's mainly, we can see male-dominated delegations in most of the cases. So this is, I think, the very first thing that one goes there, a feminist person goes there and see, is the lack of representation of that space. And especially it gets higher the more you go up in the decision-making, let's say, power that those delegations have. So the heads of delegations, the people who have the final says in each of the topics that are discussed, the higher you go, the more you see this pattern that we see also in other sectors, right? So male-dominated decision makers. So the lack of representation, I think it's a big, big problem. And that's why policies which are decided in the global level on climate change still are failing to really make or take up the demands that people are voicing on the streets, that people are asking for years, for decades. So it's 25 years and still we haven't really achieved much, and it's still the lack of representation is a big problem. But I also think that the whole system is also very much focused on technical fixes and technical solutions for a problem that we know. Climate change is not a technical thing. It's not a thing that you resolve with, simply thinking about reducing emissions. No, I mean, this is impacting people. This is impacting bodies. This is impacting also other species. So we have to have a very comprehensive understanding of the process of climate change, and therefore we cannot solve this such a big issue with only technical and let's say, I don't know, environmental experts. We need indigenous peoples bringing on their traditional knowledge, which we know are many times much more efficient to solve the climate imbalances that we observe throughout the world. We need those peoples there. So we need traditional knowledge, we need women's knowledge, we need knowledge from people who are marginalized, who were more historically marginalized. And this is a matter of also reparation, historical reparation. So, and there are a few steps that we can see in the last years, especially in the climate negotiations, in terms of including those voices and those solutions for thinking of climate change and the solutions to climate change from a broader perspective, such as, for example, there's an indigenous peoples and local communities platform which was created recently. And the idea is exactly to bring indigenous peoples and local communities from all around the world to share their traditional knowledge and how they are dealing locally with, what we call nowadays climate change, how these people have been resisting colonization and the devastation that Europe and other colonizers have brought to the world for centuries. So it's there is this space, for example, being developed in the climate negotiations, and I think it's very, very interesting to see what the solutions and that the indigenous peoples are sharing there, but still, I would say that most of the decisions are taken very, not democratically, and this is obvious because of the reasons that I also said here. And yeah, and therefore they fail to represent what people are asking, and they fail to represent especially what also to acknowledge the responsibilities that the most powerful people have. It's very comfortable to just keep living like, yeah, as if there were no responsibilities. So these are a few problems that I can identify, but there are so many, and I will just leave more time for the discussion later.
But I have like a short follow-up question, because you're also involved in the Gender Action Plan. And I think that is also something most people don't know about, that this Gender Action Plan does exist. And can you tell us more about it, and why was it so important to fight for it?
Yes, so we are also part, so the organization where I work with, and also when we go to the negotiations, we are part of a larger group of a larger advocacy group, which is the Women and Gender Constituency. And we basically try to advance the let's say the feminist ideas in the negotiations. We are from many parts of the world, and then yeah, and it's been since 2014 we had the first, let's say, broader gender decision, which was a very great achievement for us, because we've been fighting for, you know, gender and gender equality to be included in the climate decisions holistically in all its processes, and not only as a standalone thing like, hey, gender is a matter of like something in separate, or something only related to gender balance. So we've been fighting for this for many decades, but it was in 2014 when the Lima Work Program came, and then the first Gender Action Plan in 2017, if I'm not mistaken. And yeah, it's a really important, let's say, mark in the struggle of this feminist group, because it's a bold plan with actions and concrete activities that basically say to the countries which are part of the Climate Convention that they need to mainstream gender, that they need to consider gender balance in their delegations, that they need to fund women from the global south, indigenous women, to go to the negotiations. So very concrete actions that have been, let's say, set to be implemented since 2017. And the countries have this very bold policy, and they have to, now I think still there is a lot of question on how to implement that, but I would say that this is a very important policy that can guide government and also civil society to act on how to have a, you know, a climate just and also a gender just approach to the solutions to climate change. So yeah, it's called the Gender Action Plan, and it's also online. So everyone working with policy and also like advocacy, I think it's a very important policy mechanism.
Thank you for telling us. So my next question would be to Lara, because, well, we just heard how women are connecting globally to fight for a project like the Gender Action Plan, like for policies. And so in Germany, we also have like the same problem, like Isadora just told us about, that we have a very technique-orientated way to discuss the climate crisis. And so how should we also change in Germany our discussion? And should we also like talk and act more, connecting the struggles in issue of race, gender, and social justice?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I want to briefly say something about this. Are we all sitting in the same boat? Because I think when we talk about feminism on the one hand side, and I'm super happy that we're all here together now in this digital room, and it's really important that we say, okay, we're a global feminist movement, and we're like in solidarity with each other. But of course, it's also important to point out that we as women or around the world, or as feminists around the world, we're also not in the same boat. So of course, I'm sitting here in Germany, I'm trying like being a good feminist for me also means that I keep in mind that there are people way more affected by the climate crisis, way less responsible, and to make those voices heard. Yeah, and I mean, sometimes there's this feminist discourse of all women just have to, I'm sorry, Berlin is a bit loud. All women have to like take up space and be empowered. And of course, if I'm in a room with like other guys from Berlin, then it's my kind of right to take a lot of space. But it's also important as a like white privileged person to like leave space for others. I mean, this is like what intersectional feminism is about. I just wanted to make that point quickly. And then coming to your question, I mean, I think there's so much happening also with Fridays for Future. At least here in Germany, I see so many really young and really great girls, women, whatever. There, and also just today I was at the Brandenburg Gate in Berlin, where they set up this Fight for 1.5 sign with lights, and it was in a really like nothing special about it way, that there was like, I was asking for like who can give me like a short statement for a video for the NGO that I work for, and I was said, okay, it's this girl, she's doing it for the first time, but you can ask her. And there was just like a guy standing next to her and supporting her and asking other journalists if they want interviews, and they weren't really like making a big deal about it. It was just like a really normal thing that she would do it for the first time, and the guy who did it before was like helping her and keeping her back, kind of like and I think in a way a lot has happened, but of course it's still, and it's like the COP. The higher you go up in the policy levels or in the hierarchies, then the more difficult it is, and you get this like really technical discourse. And I was talking to the amazing Toni Noshwin the other day about this 1.5 target goal. I mean, it's not a goal, it's like a threshold or something. And she said that it's also a bit dangerous to just make it about numbers all the time, because then you're again in this technical discourse which has been shaped with a patriarchal agenda of making it a technical problem that you can solve with technical solutions. And that, of course, it's really important to always make this point that we cannot go higher than 1.5, but at the same time, we need a new discourse still in Germany, also, I think everywhere, to make it more about people and make it more about the people whose lives are already threatening by climate crisis, and make it less like, because I mean, when I listen to the like media discourse or within the NGO discourse about climate change, it's a lot about, okay, should it be 1.5 or 2 degrees and what's more reasonable? And it's not about, okay, how many more people will die if we don't stick to the 1.5 degree thing. If we go to 2 degrees, how many people will lose their families, will lose their houses, will lose their lives? This is not what we talk about. And when you bring it up, then it's always like, okay, but be rational, or yeah, this thing is still going on. And of course, it's not so easy to say, okay, we just need more women in all the important places and then it will be better, but we also need another way of talking about it. So we have both things at the same time, kind of. Yeah.
Thank you so much. So I have like a quick follow-up question, because for me it's also like interesting to know inside the climate justice movement in Germany, are there some changes that we not only talk about feminists, but also about how can we be more diverse, how can we make voices more heard?
I think in this point it's like really interesting. Maybe it's in other contexts it's similar, but I think this discussion about feminism that I mentioned before, it was kind of a door opener for other topics as well. And now it's a lot about how can we be more, like how can we be less white, how can we be more open to like people that are not from this like only white privileged academic background, and how can we tackle these internalized racism problems that are also in the climate movement, and it's ongoing, I think, but there's way more awareness, and especially with Endeglande, we talk about it a lot. It's, yeah, I'm still thinking about how we can make it more like, how can we make it more visible, because a lot of things are happening in conversations and in between people, and we have like self-reflection and workshops about it, and it's great. But I think a lot of BIPOC people or people with migrant backgrounds in Germany, they still think the climate justice movement is not a space where they can feel safe, and they have good reasons to think so, I think. And I'm still wondering or asking myself, how can we change this? But of course, a lot of things have to happen like inside first, and we have to like get less racist and reflect ourselves more before we can actually invite like people to come. But it's at the same time, we need like people with more diverse backgrounds to come and join the movement, so that we get out of this trap of always talking with the same white people of how can we be like less white. So yeah, but I'm thinking about how we can like be more open, or like show to more people that we would love to welcome them and work with them. But it's, yeah, I think it's especially important because next year we have elections in Germany, and it looks like there is the possibility for a coalition between the Conservative Party and the Green Party. And what happened in Austria when they had the same coalition was that it was actually kind of a trade-off thing of, okay, we protect the climate more, but we also protect our borders more. And then there was a lot of like racist policies. And the Green Party accepted, in Austria, the Green Party accepted that. And on the other hand, there was more strict climate protection laws. And I think it's really, really important for us as climate justice movement to point that out, that you cannot trade one for the other, and that it actually like goes really strongly together. But I don't really know what's the best way to do it. So I'm still open for ideas.
Thank you so much. Because Hilda, you are also like one of the founders of Fridays for Future Uganda, and I know that you are also an advocate for more diversity in the climate politics and also in the climate movement. I would love to hear your opinion, how we should tackle, how we as a movement can take on this huge problem of how we can be more diverse as a movement and can make the voices of the global south more heard, and not only us white people from the global north. Can you hear us? We cannot.
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, I will turn down my video. So, Hilda, are you there? Yes. So sadly, Hilda left us, I think because the connection was not good enough. I think she will join soon again. Sorry for that. Okay, then I would love to go forward. And like my next question was also to Stephanie. Yeah, because well, also it's a little bit like the same question I had like to Hilda, because I would love to hear more opinion and voices, because it's like really important for us to also not only talk about feminism, but also to how to connect the struggles, if that's possible. And so I would also wanted to ask your opinion, how to move forward as a movement.
On how to be more inclusive for BIPOC persons. Is that the question right now?
Yes.
I think it's a lot for people. When I think about my community here, I think a lot about socioeconomic disparities, actually, which like differ from people who are in the climate justice movement right now. For example, when I would think about going to Ende Gelände, for example, then it's something very much to ask from BIPOC people. For example, the police repression they are facing, or also only the equipment. It's like going into actions is, and also having the time, maybe trauma they already have had in the past with the police. So this again shows us that it's rather a systemic issue, and we cannot, as you just said, Lara, I think, we cannot compare and like evaluate which crisis is like more like heavier to get onto, because like it's all conflicted. It's all like capitalism and colonialism kind of had the same source. It all began, like the climate crisis didn't begin, like a lot of media say, like, oh yeah, this is like the new climate movement, but it didn't just begin with Fridays for Future. It already began in the, let's say, 15th century, when the first colonists were going to enslave people in other countries. So, and since then they are fighting, but these voices are not heard and they are not seen as activists. And this is something I feel very sad about. And I think it's about giving these people platforms and really listening. It's the first thing, I guess. Listening to their problems, to their concerns, and also not only global north, global south, but also looking at each other, looking at our neighborhoods, and also looking at what kind of problems they face, because it's really a lot to think about the climate. We already feel it with Corona, that it's so much in the air, but it's not like you can't grab it really. So people have really struggle and also have mental health issues, which we have to regard to concerning these issues when we talk about climate change. This is not something you can just like talk about, and it's something not heavy, you know, like people already have trauma in them. So we should also be very careful how we invite them into these spaces, and yeah, really try to understand their struggles, I think.
Thank you so much for sharing. Hilda is with us again. Can you hear us? Hilda? So for me, it's felt like very interesting to know because I'm not part of Fridays for Future, but I know that you also have like this discourse about how to become more diverse. I'm so sorry to I cannot hear you right now. So, can you say something again so we can check the technique? Okay, sadly, the connection is truly really bad. We will try. We'll try one.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes. Could you hear my question?
Yes, I had the question. Well, in my opinion, hello.
Maybe when we all turn out our video, then maybe her connection is getting better.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes. Please feel free to talk.
I'll turn off my video so that I can get a good connection. And in my opinion, I suggest that we need to first change the fundamental system. We need to change our fundamental system. Until we have systems in place to protect the people and our planet, everyone is at risk. Yes, most of the people at risk are those in the global south and the mostly affected, but also everyone that is on Earth is at risk, because the transition does not just have to be faster, but it also has to be fair. Like earlier said, that 10% of the rich 10% of the rich are responsible for 90% of the emissions. And this is already unfair and it's unjust, and it's the system that is built. It is this system that is unjust, because we can not go back to normal. Normal was already a crisis, and this crisis is this inequality that we are facing right now, that has the destruction of nature, the destruction of the climate, and we cannot go back to this broken system. So decision makers always make these choices for us. Like I said earlier, for the first 25 years, decisions have been made, but these decisions are not helping. They're just talks and empty promises. We need concrete action. Right now, more and more people are realizing that all the risks and injustices the world is experiencing have the same root causes. And this root cause is because of these selfish decisions that are made by our leaders. More and more people are starting to realize, and also this pandemic has helped many people realize this, that what this Fridays for Future movement has is unity. because we cannot say that we want to change or we want a better world or we want climate justice without unity. There has to be unity at the core of each and everything that we do. This starts from the things we do, the activities we take, the decisions we take. They all have to be just, they have to be fair, and they have to all put people
at the center of everything. We need to protect people and planet. And the Fridays for Future movement is diverse in different parts of the countries, in different parts of the world. And it's this unity that brings us together so that we can work together. When you look at the Fridays for Future movement, some are in the global north and some are in the global south. I'll give a clear example. What is happening right now is COP26, that is organized by climate.
I cannot hear you again. I'm so sorry for that. Hilda is again away because of technical issues. Hilda, can you hear us? I'm sorry for the technical.
For our well-being.
We lost you for like 1 minute. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Because we have.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can hear you again. Because but we lost.
Well, I was concluding that our leaders. Yes.
Yes, I will turn out my.
Our leaders are not fair.
Okay, feel free to start again.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Now I can hear you. If you want, you can start again. And we lost you like for 1 minute. So when you can, if you like, you can start your last sentence again, so we can hear you.
I was saying that these decisions that are made by our leaders are what brought us here in this unjust system. This system was built with a lot of injustice, and in order to achieve climate justice, we have to change this system. And our leaders are not fighting for the well-being of the planet and its people. So that is why these Fridays for Future movements are committed to go on the streets, to strike, to campaign, to yell, to build campaigns and form connections, to demand more action and to also grow stronger and more powerful movements until there is need, until our leaders are ready to fight with us and not against us. And right now we see that actually we've experienced that our leaders make decisions according to their selfish gains. If it is a decision that will happen in 20 years, they are always ready to sign it immediately. But if it's about something to do right now, they're always nowhere to be seen. So we need to change. Our leaders. We need more ambitious leaders that have more concrete actions to take, but not leaders who are always giving us promises, false promises, and always talks. It is vital also for people who are like decision makers for different countries to make decisive steps, which will help us grow into more sustainable countries or more sustainable cities. This will help us move faster to realizing climate justice. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing and sorry for the technique. And well, this is also perfect for my next question, which was again to Marinel. Are you with us still?
Yes.
Okay. So,
Sorry.
you're one of the founder of the Youth Leaders and Environmental Action Federation. Well, with Fridays for Future, we have like this young movement of climate activists. And also, why is it so important that young people getting more involved? And also, how can we support them to get involved? And why is it so important for you to work in this field to empower young people?
It is so important that young people is on board on decision-making processes, especially if it involves them, if it involves their future. Because like, I truly believe that even children, if you're deciding for their future, you should always have a consultation with them on what they want, like what do they want for themselves. And it is just right that young people are actually on board in this kind of decision making processes, because in 10 years and 25 years, it is today's generation that will be leading, that will be managing, you know. It is this generation who will be like the next leaders in 10 years or 15 years or 20 years. And I am just so happy that a lot of people, young people now, are actually already aware of the social of our problem, of the problem, I mean globally, like for like the climate crisis. Because if we will talk about climate crisis, it would surely affect the future of people. Like I myself, I don't want, I maybe said this already before, but I don't want to be, I still have so much dreams for myself. I want to build a family, I want to have a child, but then I don't want and also I have to reach some milestone in my career. But I don't want that time will come that I will just be busy surviving typhoons or surviving climatic disasters, because that is already a way of life. And as a young person, I have to take action now so that I can save my future. And young, like adults, people who are like our guardians, our parents, you can always support us in doing this. You can always motivate us to do more, and not like hold us back, saying rallying is not doing any good, protesting is not doing any good. Because whenever you say that to young people, you're just making them more disappointed of you, because we will not be in the situation if the older generation have just done enough, so that we will not be in this situation. And the youth are stepping up actually to take the responsibility. Of course, we cannot do it alone. We always need support from the government, from our elders. We always need guidance. And you guys, like, I mean, the older generation has the resources. I mean, the government is the resources. There are so many organizations who have resources that can be used as a platform for the youth to realize projects and programs for the environment. And this kind of support is already enough for us to maximize our voice, to maximize our action. Because like young people as we are, we always want to do more. We always want to reach more people and to be more inclusive and to reach as much as we can reach, you know. And also I am just really proud now of how young people are stepping up and how young people are fighting for what they believe in. Because coming from the Philippines, which is a conservative country, and rallying and protesting is stigmatized, I am happy that some of my peers are actually already awakened of this kind of issues, and they're actually already posting or actually have a say on this kind of topics, because they should have a say on this kind of topic, because it is their future, it is our future, it is the next generation's future that is at stake if we will not do something now. We always say this, as cliche as it may be, that if we will not do something, it might be too late. If we will not do something, it is our future that is at stake. However cliche it is really true, and we should always do something, and we should always demand for accountability from our government and for those corporations who are fueling climate change, who are who are profiting from the suffering of other people.
Thank you. And so I would like to follow the direction you gave us, because we have to act really fast right now. And but we also have to face a pandemic, and in this time of pandemic, which is another crisis, some governments, they can act fast. So Stephanie, because you are also so you are also like working in the field of health, and you are an expert on this topic, and also you are already with your group, you're linking the problem of the climate crisis with the health issues. So I would love to know from you, so how can we learn from the pandemic in case of dealing with a crisis? And how should we prepare our health system to deal better with this kind of pandemics? And are there any links to how we should react to the climate crisis? So what can we learn from the situation right now, like bad or good decisions who are taken by the government, and the responsibility of the people?
Yeah. Marinel.
I'm sorry.
No, go on.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, should I answer it or Steph?
I wanted to ask Steph, but you also can tell me, because
go Steph. I'm sorry.
Because maybe it's like really cool to know like two different opinions from different regions of the world, because well, in Germany we have we tackle the pandemic maybe in a different way than in the Philippines. So it would be like really interesting to hear both of you. But
yeah, I would really like to listen to you too, Marinel, if you would like to talk about it.
Okay. I'm sorry, Steph. But anyway, I just thought that if we have just faced the climate crisis as the same urgent matter as COVID-19 before, we will not be in this situation. Like, this is just one pandemic of many, maybe more pandemic, if we will not address climate crisis. And we should not go back. There's always a narrative that I can't wait to go back to normal, or I can't wait to get back to normal. But the normal was the problem. And if we will go back to normal, if we will go back to how it was before, then there will be no change. And I just thought that, you know, how we are being affected, like climate change is a very linked to mental health. Climate change is a very linked to other health problem. And if we will not do something now, then it just show that the climate change really affects every aspect of our lives, not just through typhoons, not just through climate disasters, but in aspect like health, mental health, and other aspects of our lives. And I just, if we will not change our processes, if we will not change the way we are dealing things before, like maybe this is not the last pandemic. I mean there will be more if we will just keep on denying that climate change is real. Go, Steph.
Yeah, thank you so much. Like, it's true. Like, Corona shows us what we can do in order to tackle crisis. So we have seen huge measures being taken, and also we see that we're still not over this. We still don't have a hand on this crisis. There are still people suffering more under the Corona crisis than others do. So I want to come back into this picture of we are all not in the same boat. And actually Corona shows us this, especially not only comparing the global north to the global south, but also the socio-economic disparities we see. So in every country, not only in the global south or not only in the global north. So it's our job to highlight these. We have to see that not everybody is going into this crisis with the same resources. And especially talking about women, I think that these crises also pose a lot of danger to all the things women have achieved up until now, all the freedom, the possibilities. We see that not only in Germany, but in all over the world, the women are taking now much more on their backs, like doing the unpaid care work, taking care of the children, also getting exploited by their work, which are mostly like less paid jobs, which are the backbone to our society, which, for example, are the nurses, which are battling Corona in the first front rows. So, and especially seeing the healthcare system more and more under pressure, also of profits right now. Like, but when we see that health, just as an intact climate, is a human right and is not something which we can draw our profit from. So, which I think is really interesting also comparing the Corona crisis to the climate crisis, is that, for example, the big pharmaceutical companies who present us right now with one solution to Corona is also opposing to find a global solution for a global pandemic, as they put against the global north, against the global south, which, like, the global north has these resources to buy all these vaccines, but the global south then at the same time hasn't. And also there are now major setbacks on research on malaria, for example, because of Corona. And this is not only problematic in this issue, but also concerning climate change. The pharmaceutical companies are one of the biggest emitters on caused by the healthcare sector. So we really have to question these systems, just as Marinel says, just as Hilda also mentioned, that these structures which seem so big, these systems, we need to change them. And I think this is something which shows us very like the Corona crisis shows this very well.
Thank you both so much for your opinion. And so I also want like go directly then to Isadora and to ask you, are you still with us? Perfect. So now we heard also a lot about like system change is so urgent and but at the same time it's such a huge problem and such a huge thing to tackle and very. So where are you starting, or where could we start? Well, to start to tackle this issue of system change and to create another system.
Okay, a difficult question. But I think it is, yeah, maybe it's starting from this acknowledgement that we've been talking here, that climate change is something so complex and that affects people and the planet and all the systems that we have in the planet, ecosystems, like directly. So thinking about climate change as a very in a systematic way, and therefore that's why we need to see it as not only an environmental issue, as not only an economic issue, as not only a technical issue. I think it's the first thing to start, the change in our minds on how to approach the issue of climate change. And I think also one very important thing, and it's a very feminist claim, I would say, that Steph mentioned about, care work and about the care economy, which is something that I think it is remarkable, and we see how the pandemic really put us all in very, like, everyone is super tired of working, because we're working. Many people are working from home. Many people who work in the care sector, who work in the delivery sector, people are like working a lot, because also I think we've been seeing how much unpaid, historically unpaid care work is something that actually is so heavy for people. And this work has been done historically by women in their households. And we know it's a trick of the capitalist system to really expropriate that force, the value from the care work in order to make profit, so profiting from it. And now we are in a moment, we see that it's so clear to many people that it is work, obviously, and we should also recognize care work, the work that you do at home, cleaning the house, keeping your your kids safe and sane, keeping yourself safe and sane. This all takes a lot of time and takes a lot of energy and resources, and therefore I think system change also goes fundamentally through the acknowledgement, not only in our minds, but also acknowledgement in like giving the proper means for this work, and recognizing that that actually bases the entire what we call economy. So the economy is based on that. So I think in order to change that, we really need to acknowledge the power of the people who have been working in those, as Steph said, in the health sector, more in so many sectors that we just took for granted. Also in like care, in the care economy. So in the places that you don't really have a formal job, but it is work anyways. So I think this is economically speaking, maybe it is a very important thing to also change the relation and how we see work.
That's a perfect answer, I think. And so because we are now pretty late, I would love to make the last round. And because this evening we talked a lot about how women have to step up and about how women should act and how important it is for us to act. So maybe right now is also the time for the last minutes to talk about the men and to talk about how they can be our ally in this fight for feminism and climate justice. And so I think that, I get asked sometimes from men, so what can we do? How can we behave? How can I be a feminist too? And sometimes I think it's funny. Sometimes I think it's really sad. But maybe it's helping some men to understand what first step they can do to be our ally and to fight together this struggle for climate justice and feminism and for another system, a system of a justice society. And so our last round, I would love to make like, what advice would you give men how to change their behavior, which is also imprinted on them from society, like toxic masculine behavior. And well, again, Lara, I would love to start with you because sometimes I talk a lot with you about this topic. And I also think it's really interesting because we are from very different regions of the world to hear also your opinion. So how can, if a man like ask, how can I change? What can I do? Could we answer them?
Yeah. First of all, I want to thank you all because it's like so inspiring to listen to all of you. And I mean, on the one hand side, you could get super depressed listening to how all the problems are connected and interlinked. But at the same time, I think it's also great because like if we really want to stop the climate crisis and stop the climate injustices, then we have to overcome capitalism. We have to like overcome patriarchal system. And this is great because that's actually what we wanted to do anyways. So I think it's also a good thing that we have to work on it all like at the same time. And that also enables us to have a really broad movement fighting for it. Yeah, that I just want to say as a positive note. And to all the guys, I think you don't actually have to do that much. Like it's so easy being a feminist. Sometimes it just means to shut the fuck up and let others speak, for example. Or sometimes it just means to not get on a podium and instead suggest for the organizers to invite a woman. Or if they don't want to, I saw this, I don't even know where it was. I think it was actually a guy from Greenpeace or like from some climate NGO. And he was invited and he asked about it like, do you really want to do like an all-male panel? And isn't there any other experts that you could ask? And they said, no, there are no others, you should come. And then he was sitting on the stage and he said, okay, we were talking before and you said there are no other experts, but actually I know this woman, she's like a real expert in the field and I would like to swap places with her. And then he just left the stage and she came up. So it's sometimes really easy to just make space and let others speak. And I think this is the best thing that guys could do, or like all people who want to be feminist can do. And of course it clashes with our ego and it's something that we can like encourage each other by just like, as well as we have to value care work and all this like invisible work. I think also in activism, we have to create a culture, or in general in politics, we have to create like an environment and a culture where all different sorts of work are actually valued and like pat each other on the shoulders also for doing like the background work that is hardly seen, for Miriam doing the technical stuff today, for example, like pointing that out and valuing people for doing that, because then it's maybe sometimes easier for guys to also do that and to make space for those who are like not heard enough to have a voice and to speak. Yeah.
Thank you. So, who wants to go next, or who has to share something else? Maybe from their experience in different level of, in different regions or in different level of activism or negotiations.
Maybe I just want to share that, you know, men, you should always treat women you're equal, because in this kind of movement, they say like, oh, women are just so emotional, they're just overthinking it, they're just incapable of doing something. I have heard of that, like, personally. So I don't like I don't think, like, I mean, practically speaking, like, women are emotional, but it should not be used against them. Like, it should not be used against us. We are capable, more than capable. So my message to men is, like, treat women you're equal. That is for me, that is the best thing that you could do to support women, to treat them you're equal. Yeah.
Thank you. So, is there anyone who wants to add something more?
Yes, I would want to add something. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, I agree with Lara and Marinel about that men have to treat women equal, and also if you are cautious about why women are not on a certain platform, at least ask for them or request that they be there, because it all starts with what we do or what we have to say, because what we say is what makes other people stronger, especially those who are going through certain circumstances. And in most cases, women bear the biggest burden, not only at home or home care, but also like other responsibilities. A woman is a very big figure in ACT, although most cases her capabilities are always underlooked, but women always have these solutions with them, because it's in their nature that love comes up. So I think that men should also consider requesting for women's engagement and also participation, not only in like home things, but also like in decision making and everything, because they always give a very good point of view in making ideas or coming up with solutions to certain problems. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Stephanie, you have your camera on for 1 minute.
Okay, there I am. Yeah, I agree with you all, but I also think that we are talking about a system which has been there for centuries now. So what I always say to my guy friends is like, actually, this is an active part to take in, like also for me to see the patriarchy, it also took some time to even like recognize these moments where patriarchy is coming in, swooshing into our daily lives. And actually, it's kind of work to dismantle patriarchy. And you either try actively to dismantle it, or you're upholding it. So I would also say this is something which cannot be like discussed once in your political group, for example, but has to be a constant progress. And also, what I also wanted to mention is that we haven't really touched the subject of queer feminism, for example. So this is also a point where we have to see how can we get better in not only this binary female male thinking, but also like this gender fluidness, and how we can be inclusive for every and all genders.
Thank you so much. So I would also love to thank all of you to participate on this debate and to make your voices heard. And for me also, it's just, oh, Isadora, do you also wanted to add something, or? Okay. So for me, it's such a huge discussion with so many different levels. It's really hard to tackle the whole in 2 hours. So it's just the start, and tomorrow we will continue with like different workshops and another panel. And I hope to do more this kinds of events where we like pick out one special topic, for example, queer feminism and climate justice, because also I love to talk about this issue as a queer person. And so to start a discussion about it and to continue to talk to each other, and like to create also like spaces where we can meet, and maybe then have like in the future together projects, or that our struggle are like say this that we start to grow together more and to learn from each other, because when we are acting together we are truly strong, and then something can happen, like the gender action plan at the UN climate negotiations, which was really which was, for me, it was like amazing to see how this can happen. And so sometimes it's like little steps, sometimes it's like huge steps, but that we are all fighting to go into the right direction, even when it's sometimes really hard. And so I want to thank you all for participating in our first panel. And I'm looking forward to hear from you again on our next panels, or at the UN Climate Conference, or at the protest, or somewhere else. And I hope that you all guys stay healthy over the winter and over the pandemic. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for organizing, Katrin.
Thank you.
Thanks, Katrin.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
And also thank you for Miriam and Mike and,
Yes.
the Orga team and the technique behind all the conference. Okay, see you soon.
Cheers.
Thank you.